Have you ever wondered how unresolved murders from the 1960s and 70s still haunt us today? These cold cases hold secrets that can reshape our understanding of justice, society, and the very fabric of our communities. As new forensic technologies emerge, they offer a glimmer of hope for victims' families desperate for closure. But with this potential comes a complex web of challenges that investigators must navigate. Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries behind these notorious cases and explore how modern techniques could finally bring justice where there was once only silence. Comment below, which cold case intrigues you the most? Cold cases, particularly those from the 1960s and 70s, represent a fascinating yet somber chapter in the annals of criminal justice. These unresolved cases often remain in the public consciousness, shrouded in a layer of mystery that sparks public interest and debate even decades later. During the mid-20th century, a variety of social, political, and technological factors contributed to an environment that both highlighted the failures of law enforcement and brought to light the complexities of crime and justice. One of the most significant aspects of this era that impacted cold cases was the dramatic shift in social norms and values that occurred during the 1960s and 70s. The period was marked by notable events such as the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and a burgeoning counterculture, all of which influenced how crimes were perceived and prosecuted. Increased public awareness regarding issues like racial inequality and police brutality served to shape community relations with law enforcement, often exacerbating the difficulties investigators faced in solving crimes. During these years, many cases went cold due to a variety of reasons including lack of forensic technology, limited investigative techniques, and, in some cases, the prejudices of the period that obscured the pursuit of justice for victims. For example, several crimes that involved marginalized communities received insufficient attention from law enforcement, leading to cases that were less likely to be solved. Furthermore, the investigative tools available to police during this time were relatively primitive compared to modern standards. While fingerprints and witness testimonies were essential, the absence of advanced DNA analysis, digital records, and comprehensive databases severely hampered the ability of detectives to link evidence to suspects or connect various crime scenes. Consequently, crimes that today would likely be addressed with swift technological assistance languished without resolution, turning into cold cases that would haunt communities for decades. One notable instance from the 1960s that exemplifies the cold case phenomenon is the murder of Elizabeth Short in 1947, often referred to as the Black Dahlia case. While it occurred at the end of the 1940s, its echoes were felt strongly in the following decades, especially given the sensationalist media coverage it received. The case's unresolved nature contributed to its notoriety, as various theories emerged involving Hollywood connections, organized crime, and even police corruption. The media sensationalized numerous aspects of the case, complicating public perception and potentially obstructing the course of justice. This interplay of public fascination and law enforcement struggles in these cold cases serves as a testament to the socio-political climate of the times, illustrating how art, culture, and media influenced legal outcomes. The 1970s brought about its own set of challenges. The rise of serial killers became a prominent horrific trend, with infamous figures such as Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy striking fear across the nation. As these individuals evaded capture for extended periods, it reflected a significant change in public concern over crime, leading to a national dialogue about safety, justice, and the efficacy of law enforcement. The interplay between societal fears regarding these high-profile cases and the often interwoven narratives of cold cases drew considerable media attention, causing authorities to grapple with an increasing burden on their investigative resources. Many of these cold cases from the 1960s and 70s eventually re-emerged in the public consciousness through true crime documentaries, podcasts, and books. These platforms reignited interest and brought modern investigative techniques to bear on unsolved cases, bridging the gap between past failures and contemporary technological advancements in forensic science. Law enforcement agencies have increasingly recognized the value of revisiting these cases, leading to the establishment of cold case units dedicated to applying new methods of investigation to unresolved mysteries. Witness accounts, previously overlooked evidence, and advancements such as familial DNA testing have emerged as powerful tools that promise hope in finding closure for victims' families and communities. The integration of modern techniques with classic investigative methods revitalizes cold cases, allowing for a collaborative approach that can link decades-old crimes to current investigative practices, offering not just a chance for resolution but also a deeper understanding of the ongoing societal consequences of those unresolved cases. Inherent in the examination of cold cases from the 1960s and 70s is an exploration of the ethical implications surrounding justice, memory, and the quest for resolution. The narratives that have unfolded over the years reveal complexities in human behavior, societal transformation, and the continuing evolution of criminal justice as it confronts historical legacies of discrimination and neglect. As the past and present collide, the ongoing interest in cold cases from this delineated era not only sheds light on the unsolved mysteries of individual lives but also prompts introspection about the broader mechanisms of our justice system. Understanding these cold cases ultimately serves to highlight how intertwined the stories of victims, detectives, and communities are, encapsulating the relentless pursuit for truth amid the turbulent backdrop of the American socio-cultural landscape in the latter half of the 20th century. The decades of the 1960s and 70s were rife with notable unsolved murders that have captivated public attention for years due to their sensational circumstances, unresolved nature, and the socio-cultural context in which they occurred. One of the earliest and most notorious unsolved murders from this era was that of Elizabeth Short, more famously known as the Black Dahlia. Although the murder occurred in January 1947, its ramifications resonated throughout the 1960s and 70s due in large part to sensational media coverage that turned Short into an enduring symbol of the dark side of fame and the seedy underbelly of Hollywood. Her body was discovered cut in half, exhibiting a level of brutality that shocked the nation. Despite numerous suspects and extensive media attention, the case remained unsolved, with investigators facing myriad challenges, including a lack of forensics and overwhelming public speculation that served to muddy the waters of the investigation. The unresolved nature of her murder offered fertile ground for conspiracy theories, ranging from police corruption to the involvement of various Hollywood figures, further fueling public fascination and initiating debate about justice, morality, and the darker aspects of the American dream. Another infamous murder that has remained unsolved is that of the civil rights leader Medgar Evers. Evers was assassinated in June 1963 outside his home in Jackson, Mississippi, a murder that not only highlighted the racial tensions of the time but also underscored the risks faced by activists during the civil rights movement. Despite a trial that resulted in the acquittal of the primary suspect, Byron de la Beckwith, the case ultimately remained unsolved for decades until renewed interest led to a retrial in 1994, when de la Beckwith was finally convicted. This posthumous prosecution reflected broader social shifts and changing attitudes towards justice and equality, prompting society to reckon with its violent past. Another significant unsolved murder is that of Sharon Tate, an actress and model, who was brutally murdered in August 1969 at her home by followers of Charles Manson. Tate, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, became one of the most tragic symbols of the Manson family murders, a case that drew national media attention and horrified the public. While a handful of those involved in the crime were eventually apprehended, Tate's brutal murder continues to be shrouded in mystery, forever intertwined with the chaotic and revolutionary spirit of the late 1960s. The reverberations of her murder still echo through popular culture, significantly impacting how violence against women, particularly those in the public eye, is perceived and discussed. Another gripping yet unresolved case from this era is that of the Zodiac Killer, who terrorized Northern California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The killer is infamously known for sending taunting letters to the press, often with coded messages that captured the public's imagination and incited widespread fear. While several murders attributed to the Zodiac have been confirmed, the killer's identity remains a mystery, leading to one of the most notorious goat-chasing pursuits in American criminal history. The cultural impact of the Zodiac case cannot be understated. It has inspired countless books, movies, and documentaries, thus embedding the story into the American psyche, illustrating the chilling tension between a criminal and a society unable to protect itself. Furthermore, the the murder of actress and singer, Margot St. James, in 1980 captured attention due to her connections with the 1970s feminist movement. St. James was a vocal advocate for sex worker rights, and her murder reflected the societal struggles and stigmas that were prevalent during the era. The investigation surrounding her death unearthed significant challenges, including issues related to bias against marginalized women and the complexities of advocating for justice in a time when many such voices were silenced. Each of these unresolved cases holds layers of complex social issues, including gender dynamics, racial disparities, and the cultural climate of the times. As society moves forward, the persistent interest in these unsolved murders serves not only as an exploration of the criminal justice system's failings but also as a reflection of human behavior, societal transformation, and the ongoing dialogue surrounding justice, memory, and the pressing need for resolution. Each of these stories resonates differently across generations, evoking feelings of empathy, anger, and confusion, which prompts reflections on the moral fabric of society and our collective responsibility toward ensuring that victims and their loved ones receive the justice they deserve. The dialogue around these past atrocities reinforces the notion that while time may pass, the quest for truth remains a potent and necessary pursuit, intricately woven into the very fabric of the community's history and cultural consciousness. As investigative techniques advance, the hope remains that these cold cases will find new life, offering not just potential resolutions, but also a way to confront the societal failings that allowed the injustices of the past to endure unchecked. Ultimately, the unresolved murders from the 1960s and 70s continue to provoke thought, stirring a collective remembrance of those lost and a critical examination of the systems within which justice is sought and denied. During the mid-20th century, particularly in the 1960s and 70s. Police investigation techniques were primarily focused on conventional methods that really lacked the advanced technological tools available today, which greatly impacted the capabilities of law enforcement agencies to effectively solve crimes. When examining the investigative practices of the time, it is essential to delineate how these methods, shaped by the socio-cultural context, limited the success rates of police investigations, ultimately contributing to the rise of cold cases that would linger for decades. The most fundamental technique during this period was the reliance on traditional or shoe-leather investigative strategies, where detectives would engage in extensive interviews with witnesses, victims, and suspects. This process often involved going door to door to solicit information from the public, hoping that someone might provide a crucial piece of evidence or remember a small detail that could point to a suspect. However, this method had inherent limitations, such as biases in witness accounts and the potential for misremembered details due to the trauma surrounding violent crime. Police officers were trained to rely heavily on their instincts and interpersonal skills, assessing people's nonverbal cues and behaviors to determine credibility, which, while an art in itself, did not ensure the accuracy of information gathered. Their approach often emphasized interrogation over more scientific methods, relying on the usual rule of thumb that a good interrogation could elicit confessions or significant leads. Unfortunately, this method raised ethical concerns, particularly when officers resorted to coercion or manipulation in hopes of securing confessions, sometimes leading to false admissions of guilt that complicated the course of justice. Forensic science was in its infancy during this era, which inherently restricted the array of tools at the disposal of law enforcement. While techniques such as fingerprint analysis had been established, the methods for accurately analyzing and matching prints were not as refined as they are today. In many cases, crucial evidence was either overlooked or poorly processed, resulting in significant gaps in the investigation. The lack of specialized forensic training among many detectives meant that they may have been unaware of how to carefully examine crime scenes or were ill-equipped to affirmatively secure and preserve evidence. Moreover, the practice of collecting and handling evidence varied significantly among jurisdictions, leading to inconsistencies that would often hinder investigations. The absence of comprehensive databases meant that cross-referencing fingerprints, salacious individuals, or even modus operandi among various cases was largely manual, a daunting task requiring excess time and effort. DNA testing was unheard of during this time, and its absence meant that many biological samples, such as hair, blood, or bodily fluids, were not adequately preserved or analyzed at the crime scene. While some detectives began to explore ballistics and hair comparison, an emerging yet still rudimentary field, the lack of an established understanding of such scientific techniques resulted in a great deal of uncertainty when following leads derived from tangible materials. In addition to the challenges posed by forensic limitations, social factors played a significant role in shaping how investigations were conducted. The political climate of the 1960s and 70s, heavily influenced by social upheaval and tumult, created an environment in which law enforcement faced pressures to perform and secure quick resolutions to high-profile cases, some of which involved marginalized communities. Oftentimes, police departments devoted resources to notorious murders that evoked national interest, relegating lesser-known cases to the sidelines and creating an environment where key evidence could go uncollected, and victims could be inadequately represented. Issues regarding racial inequality and civil rights shaped not only community police relations but also how investigations were approached, with biases impacting both the collection of evidence and the nature of witness cooperation. Many cases involving minority victims received minimal investigation, as disparities in societal treatment and resource allocation meant that the priority of investigations did not reflect equitable justice. Moreover, the evolving role of media during this time was pivotal in shaping public perceptions around law enforcement investigations. The sensationalism of crime reporting, particularly in urban newspapers and the emerging realm of television news, meant that certain cases were thrust into the spotlight, garnering acute public scrutiny and pressure on investigators. With many communities actively engaging with the media, detectives often had to navigate the delicate balance of conducting thorough investigations while managing the narrative presented to the public. The race to prove efficacy in police work sometimes resulted in premature conclusions or even missteps, as the compulsion to ensure closure consumed the investigative process. Ultimately, the combination of rudimentary forensic science, traditionally reliant investigative practices, socio-political pressures, and media interest culminated in a police investigation landscape that was fraught with challenges that severely limited the efficacy of solving crimes. These factors coalesced into a milieu that allowed numerous cases to slip into the realm of cold cases, lingering frustrations for victims' families and communities, echoing throughout subsequent decades. As investigative strategies have evolved, we reflect on how these historical practices formed the foundation from which modern law enforcement has been striving to improve, learning from the inadequacies of past methodologies while embracing the revolutionary potential of contemporary forensic science to ensure that the lessons learned from these cold cases resonate in the pursuit of justice. The interplay of these contexts provides insight into the ongoing efforts by law enforcement to bridge the investigative techniques of yesteryear with the evolving landscape of technology and community engagement in the relentless pursuit of truth and resolution. The impact of media coverage on cold cases is a multifaceted exploration that intersects the realms of journalism, public perception, and the judicial process. Throughout history, media coverage has wielded significant influence over how criminal cases are perceived, investigated, and consumed by the public. In the context of cold cases, which often languish in obscurity for years or even decades, the role of media becomes paramount, not merely as a vessel for information but as a dynamic actor that can revive interest, spark public debate, and sometimes even prompt law enforcement action. One of the most immediate effects of media coverage on cold cases is its ability to resurrect forgotten investigations, transforming them into flashpoints of renewed interest. With the right conditions, a tragedy from the past can resurface as a topic of significant public conversation, often triggered by advancements in forensic technology, shifts in societal values, or new revelations. For instance, true crime documentaries, podcasts, and investigative journalism have become increasingly popular as outlets that shine a light on unsolved crimes, leading to an increase in public pressure for law enforcement agencies to re-examine long-dormant cases. These forms of media engage audiences not just by presenting the facts but by weaving narratives that evoke empathy and provoke emotional responses, often featuring personal stories that humanize the victims and their families. Such coverage can serve as a double-edged sword. While it can raise awareness and potentially lead to breakthroughs in investigations, it can also complicate the process of seeking justice. When media sensationalizes aspects of a case, whether by highlighting gruesome details, speculating about possible suspects, or fostering conspiracy theories, it can distort public perception and obstruct the course of justice. In many high-profile cold cases, media narratives have been known to influence jury pools, shape public sentiment, and even put pressure on law enforcement agencies to reach conclusions that fit pre-established narratives rather than permitting an objective investigation. The involvement of the media can attract the attention of amateur sleuths and internet investigators, who might contribute valuable insights or inadvertently stir questions and theories that mislead the actual investigations. Moreover, the 24-hour news cycle and the endless nature of digital platforms often result in immediate repercussions for every twist and turn in these cases. As journalists pursue the latest angles, it raises ethical considerations about the accuracy and integrity of the information being reported, often blurring the lines between fact and speculation. The public's desire for resolution, combined with the media's drive for compelling stories, can inadvertently create a cycle that both seeks justice and complicates the path to it. Another significant aspect of media influence on cold cases is its capacity to shape the dialogue surrounding systemic issues related to crime and justice. Many unsolved cases are emblematic of broader societal failings, including those stemming from racial disparities, economic inequality, and biases in law enforcement practices. In smaller or marginalized communities, media coverage can spotlight these disparities, galvanizing public support and sometimes leading to pressure for reforms. For instance, when journalists investigate a long-forgotten case, they may uncover racial injustices or highlight the overlooked narratives of victims who may not have received the attention they deserved due to prevailing social prejudices. As audiences engage with these stories, they become aware of the contours of injustice in the criminal justice system, prompting discussions that transcend individual cases and hinge on social change and resolution. Documentaries such as The Jinx and podcasts like Serial have not only revisited cold cases but have also stirred conversations about ethics in journalism, the treatment of marginalized communities, and the responsibilities of law enforcement agencies to pursue justice equitably. Beyond just raising awareness, media coverage has been known to lead to tangible outcomes for cold cases as well. Law enforcement agencies increasingly recognize the power of the press in generating tips and gathering information. A case that remains stagnant can be reinvigorated by a well-timed article, broadcast feature, or online discussion. For instance, the resurgence of interest in cold cases due to media exposure can lead to new eyewitness accounts, previously undisclosed evidence getting re-evaluated, and even the involvement of witnesses who may have felt too intimidated to come forward in the past. Police departments, now more aware of the public's stake in unresolved cases, frequently partner with media outlets to roll out campaigns aimed at solving these mysteries. These collaborations emphasize the importance of community engagement in the quest for justice and demonstrate that media can play a critical role not just in informing the public but also in healing the wounds of unresolved crime. Moreover, ongoing media interest can also serve as a beacon of hope for the families of victims, providing them with a platform to share their stories and advocate for justice that may have been overlooked. Cold cases can carry emotional burdens for families, often leaving them in a state of unresolved grief. Media attention not only allows them to grieve publicly but can also ignite interest among additional sympathizers and advocates. Families may forge connections with policymakers or victim advocacy groups as they gain wider recognition through media appearances, which can lead to increased funding for reinvestigation efforts or systemic reforms in law enforcement practices. As the public becomes more involved in these cases, it shifts the responsibility from just the police to society as a whole, underscoring a communal commitment to seeking justice that resonates deeply within those affected by crime. The long-lasting impact of media coverage on cold cases highlights the evolving landscape of both journalism and law enforcement in the digital age. Social media platforms have introduced new forms of rapid information dissemination, enabling stories to circulate exponentially and gripping audiences from around the globe. Hashtags and viral content have emerged as pivotal elements in launching campaigns or reopening dialogues about cold cases. Engaged audiences now have the power to mobilize for justice, allowing collective advocacy for the unsolved mysteries that may have previously been relegated to the annals of forgotten public memory. As individuals come together to disseminate information, raise awareness, and foster activism, the media's role continues to adapt, transcending traditional boundaries and reshaping the ways cold cases can be approached. The landscape of media coverage will undoubtedly continue to play a pivotal role in determining the trajectory of cold cases, echoing beyond mere speculation to actively engaging with the rigor of truth-seeking, as well as fostering societal reflections on justice, memory, and the lives intertwined with these unresolved stories. In conclusion, the impact of media coverage on cold cases is an intricate tapestry woven from threads of public interest, systemic scrutiny, and the unyielding quest for justice. From breathing new life into forgotten investigations to complicating perceptions and narratives, the media serves as a dual force that can either hinder or help the pursuit of truth. As media platforms evolve in the age of information, the dynamics between law enforcement, journalism, and the public will continue to shift, underscoring an essential dialogue surrounding accountability, ethics, and the profound human stories at the heart of cold cases. Through these narratives, we not only confront the mysteries of the past but also embark on a journey that encompasses reflection, justice, and a shared commitment to ensure that the victims' voices are never marginalized or forgotten. When delving into high-profile cold cases, the identities and backgrounds of key suspects often reveal a complex interplay of personal histories, motivations, and socio-political contexts that significantly shape each case's narrative. These individuals, frequently central to the investigations and media portrayals, become more than mere suspects. They embody larger societal themes ranging from mental illness and violence to cultural discontent and systemic failures. Understanding their backgrounds not only humanizes these suspects but also provides vital insights into the factors that may have led them to commit heinous acts, thereby complicating the straightforward pursuit of justice. One of the most notorious examples from this landscape is Ted Bundy, a serial killer whose criminal exploits captivated the public and represented a chilling manifestation of evil. Born in 1946 in Burlington, Vermont, Bundy's early life was marked by instability. His parents never married, and he was raised by his grandparents, initially believing they were his biological parents. This early deception, combined with his eventual discovery of his true parentage, likely instilled deep psychological issues within Bundy, contributing to his later violent behavior. Bundy's charm and intelligence made him an unlikely suspect for law enforcement, leading him to elude capture multiple times. His charisma enabled him to manipulate not only his victims but also those around him, further complicating the investigations into his crimes. The allure Bundy had, coupled with the social dynamics of the 1970s, created an environment ripe for denial of evil lurking behind an attractive facade, thus capturing media attention and societal fascination in a manner that obscured his horrific acts. In contrast, the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, has brought scrutiny to numerous potential suspects over the decades. Among the key figures is George Hodel, a well-to-do doctor with a troubled past who was heavily scrutinized after the murder. Hodel had connections to the Los Angeles elite and harbored interests in the arts, yet his lifestyle and associations raised eyebrows within the community. Hodel's son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD homicide detective, became convinced of his father's guilt after discovering evidence he believed connected Hodel to the Black Dahlia case, arguing that his father's eccentric and abusive behavior, as well as a meticulously concealed dual life, positioned him as a prime suspect. This family dynamic is laden with psychological ramifications that further complicate the investigation, illustrating how familial legacies and personal histories can intertwine with heinous crimes. The sheer complexity of the case, alongside Hodel's connections and social standing, enhanced the case's mystique and transformed it into a cultural phenomenon that continued to evoke interest long after its occurrence in 1947. Similarly, the case of the Zodiac Killer is shrouded in a cloud of suspicion surrounding several suspects, none of whom have definitively been linked to the crimes. One prominent figure, Arthur Lee Allen, emerged as a potential suspect based on circumstantial evidence, including his violent history and peculiar behavior. Born in 1933, Allen led a troubled life that included allegations of child abuse and erratic behavior, both of which could signal underlying issues contributing to his potential violence. Allen's fascination with ciphers and codes aligned with the Zodiac Killer's style of taunting police with riddles, leading many to consider him a credible suspect despite the absence of conclusive evidence tying him directly to the murders. The media's entrapment in this suspenseful narrative turned Allen into a figure of intense speculation and paralleled the public's desire for closure in a case that seemed perpetually tantalizingly close yet frustratingly out of reach. The chilling saga of John Wayne Gacy, a Chicago-based serial killer who preyed upon young boys in the 1970s, adds another layer of complexity to the examination of suspects in high-profile cases. Gacy was a well-respected community member known for his involvement in local politics and his charitable work with children, which provided him cover for his malevolent actions. His duality, a model citizen in public and a depraved predator in private, illustrates the disturbing reality that evil can lurk beneath seemingly benevolent facades. Gacy's upbringing, marred by an abusive father and tumultuous relationships, shaped a narrative of trauma that culminated in his violent acts. His capture in 1978 led to a significant societal reckoning, as the investigation unearthed the bodies of 29 young men buried under his home, prompting widespread horror and disbelief that a man so ingrained in community could commit such atrocities. Gacy's case evoked a national conversation about vigilance in communities, the importance of recognizing signs of domestic abuse, and the complexities of discerning good from evil in people's intimate lives. Investigations into high-profile cold cases often grapple with societal issues, particularly when examining the backgrounds of individuals involved, shedding light on systemic challenges affecting crime and justice. The unsolved murder of civil rights leader Medgar Evers in 1963 drew attention to the role of racial tensions in both inflicted violence and the subsequent investigations. Byron de la Beckwith, the primary suspect in Evers's murder, initially evaded justice through a series of trials marred by prejudicial attitudes within the Southern justice system. Beckwith's background as an ardent segregationist and member of the Ku Klux Klan tied him to broader societal attitudes of the time, highlighting how racism not only influenced the suspect's actions but also hampered investigative efforts. The eventual retrial and conviction of Beckwith in 1994 underscored ongoing societal shifts and a commitment to reckoning with past injustices. Then there is the case of Sharon Tate, killed by followers of Charles Manson, whose motives were complex and far-reaching, reflecting not just personal derangement but broader cultural upheavals during the 1960s. Manson, born in 1934, grew up without a father and spent much of his life in and out of correctional facilities, which shaped both his worldview and his methods of manipulation. Manson leveraged the counterculture climate to attract a group of misfits into his commune, advocating an apocalyptic philosophy that combined societal rebellion with chilling violence. The brutal murders committed by his followers were a culmination of Manson's psychological control over them, demonstrating how one individual's disturbed ideology can lead an entire group toward horrific acts. The societal fallout from these murders became enmeshed in public discourse about cultural shifts, the innocence of the 1960s being shattered, and the emerging shadow of violence intertwined with disillusionment. Through the exploration of these key suspects in high-profile murder cases, it becomes evident that their backgrounds offer crucial insights into not only their actions but also the societal frameworks in which these tragedies occurred. Each suspect's narrative is reflective of larger themes within the justice system and society at large, revealing that the shadows of crime are often interwoven with the complexities of human behavior, unaddressed psychological issues, and deep-seated cultural tensions. As society continues to wrestle with these themes and unresolved cases, understanding the motivations and backgrounds of key suspects may pave pathways to not only achieving justice for the victims but also cultivating a broader dialogue about moral responsibility, accountability, and the relentless pursuit of truth in the face of enduring pain and tragedy. Such an inquiry ultimately serves to remind us all of the interwoven nature of criminal justice, individual histories, and the collective responsibility of society towards seeking resolution, understanding, and healing in the aftermath of unspeakable acts. Since the 1970s, advancements in forensic science have dramatically transformed the landscape of criminal investigations, fundamentally changing how law enforcement agencies handle evidence, solve cases, and seek justice. This evolution is marked by a series of groundbreaking innovations that have enhanced the accuracy and efficiency of crime-solving methods, going beyond the rudimentary techniques that characterized investigations in the mid-20th century. As appreciation for science and technology in the judicial process has grown, so too has the recognition of the pivotal role that forensic science plays in the pursuit of truth within the criminal justice system. Among these advancements, the development of DNA analysis stands out as one of the most revolutionary breakthroughs, fundamentally altering the capabilities of investigators to link suspects to crimes, exonerate the innocent, and solve long-standing cold cases that had previously stymied law enforcement. Early DNA testing began to emerge in the late 1980s, following the pioneering work of British geneticist Sir Alec Jeffreys, who developed what became known as DNA profiling. This technology enabled forensic scientists to extract genetic material from biological samples such as blood, hair, and saliva, providing a unique identifier for individuals. The precision of DNA evidence is unparalleled, as the likelihood of two individuals sharing the same DNA profile is astronomically low. This technological progress allowed law enforcement agencies to match DNA collected from crime scenes directly to suspects, leading to definitive links between the perpetrator and the crime and significantly reducing reliance on circumstantial evidence or eyewitness accounts, which had been historically fraught with limitations and potential for human error. The integration of DNA evidence has not only led to the resolution of many cold cases from decades past but also served to exonerate wrongfully convicted individuals who had been misidentified based on less reliable evidence. In addition to advancements in DNA analysis, techniques surrounding bloodstain pattern analysis, BPA, and serology have also progressed significantly since the 1970s. Bloodstain pattern analysis involves the examination of blood spatter patterns at crime scenes to reconstruct the events leading to a victim's injury or death, providing crucial insights into the nature of the crime and the position of both the victim and perpetrator during the incident. Improved methodologies, including the use of specialized lighting and chemical agents, have enhanced the ability of forensic experts to detect and analyze blood evidence, even after it has been washed away or attempted to be cleaned. Similarly, forensic biology has benefited from advances in serology, which can identify the presence of bodily fluids and provide valuable leads in investigations involving sexual offenses or violent crimes. The amalgamation of these techniques affords investigators a broader understanding of the crime scene dynamics, supporting more accurate narratives and aiding in the apprehension of offenders. Fingerprint analysis has also seen substantial advancements since the 1970s, transitioning from manual systems to automated fingerprint identification systems, AFIS. The traditional method of fingerprint comparison relied heavily on the subjective judgment of trained forensic experts, often leading to discrepancies between analysts. Modern AFIS technology employs sophisticated algorithms that can analyze minutiae and pattern recognition features on fingerprints, producing rapid results in vast databases of known prints. This shift not only streamlines the identification process but also increases the accuracy of matches, allowing for more reliable connections between suspects and criminal activity. With the integration of these automated systems, law enforcement agencies can now process fingerprint evidence with unprecedented speed, linking suspects to crimes and generating leads for further investigation in real time. Forensic anthropology has also flourished, particularly in its application to the identification of human remains in complex cases, such as those involving mass graves or severely decomposed bodies. Experts in this field use their knowledge of human skeletal biology to assist in determining the age, sex, ancestry, and stature of unidentified remains, providing crucial information that can aid in establishing the identity of victims. Advances in 3D imaging and skeletal reconstruction techniques have facilitated the visual representation of remains, thus enhancing communication between forensic anthropologists and law enforcement personnel. This collaboration is essential in solving cold cases involving unidentified bodies that have lingered in the system for years or decades. Furthermore, the use of forensic odontology, which analyzes dental records and bite marks, has become a prominent tool in the identification of victims, particularly in cases of mass fatalities or disaster scenarios. In recent years, forensic science has embraced the revolutionary potential of digital forensics, reflecting society's increasing reliance on technology. The proliferation of digital devices has created a new realm of evidence that is crucial in contemporary investigations. Digital forensics encompasses the recovery and analysis of data from computers, smartphones, tablets, and other digital devices. This field has grown in importance as criminals often leave digital footprints that can provide key insights into their activities, communications, and even motives. Law enforcement agencies now routinely engage digital forensic experts to investigate cyber crimes, financial fraud, and other offenses spanning the digital landscape, illustrating how forensic techniques have adapted to meet the challenges of modern crime. Another fascinating frontier in forensic science is the use of familial DNA testing, which allows investigators to identify potential suspects by analyzing DNA from relatives. This innovative technique can help solve cold cases where the perpetrator's DNA is not present in criminal databases but the DNA of a family member, such as a sibling or child, is available. By investigating and connecting familial ties, law enforcement can narrow down a list of potential suspects, even leading to arrests in cases that seemed hopelessly cold. Familial DNA testing has spurred ethical debates, particularly regarding privacy concerns and the potential for mass surveillance. However, its contributions to solving previously uncrackable cases cannot be overlooked. Moreover, advancements in toxicology have refined the analysis of substances found in biological samples, allowing forensic scientists to detect drugs, alcohol, and other toxic agents with greater accuracy. Improved methodologies such as gas chromatography mass spectrometry, GCMS, enable the identification of minute quantities of substances within tissues or fluids, providing valuable evidence in cases involving overdoses, poisonings, or substance abuse. This enhancement of toxicological testing gives forensic experts a broader arsenal of tools to unravel complex cases where multiple factors may be involved in a victim's death, affirming that chemistry plays a vital role alongside biology in the forensic sciences. Overall, advancements in forensic science since the 1970s have yielded transformative changes in how crimes are investigated and prosecuted. From the revolutionary capabilities afforded by DNA analysis to the rapid identification facilitated by automated systems, and from the detailed insights gleaned through forensic anthropology to the intricate nature of digital forensics, these developments have not only expedited the resolution of crimes but have also fostered a climate of accountability and transparency within the criminal justice system. As society continues to evolve, the interplay between forensic science and law enforcement will ensure that cold cases from decades past are not simply relics of unresolved inquiry but rather potential avenues for justice, healing, and closure for victims and their families. The potential for proactive approaches to forensic investigations signifies a future where vigilance, technological innovation, and ethical responsibility converge to create a more just society, where the enduring quest for truth is met with the resolute power of science. The role of public interest in solving cold cases is a dynamic and multifaceted phenomenon, intricately woven into the fabric of criminal justice and community engagement. Public interest can be understood as the collective concern, curiosity, and emotional investment that society demonstrates towards crime stories, particularly those that remain unresolved. This interest not only sheds light on the stories of the victims and their families but can also mobilize communities, media, and legal systems to push for justice. As cold cases often languish for extended periods of time without resolution, the rekindling of public interest can serve as a catalyst for law enforcement agencies, prompting them to re-examine evidence, re-interview witnesses, and utilize modern investigative techniques that may not have been previously available. One of the most powerful manifestations of public interest is through media coverage, which has the potential to revive forgotten cases by creating a sense of urgency and necessity for justice. True crime documentaries, podcasts, social media campaigns, and feature articles can garner widespread attention, bringing cases back into the public eye. These platforms often invite not just passive consumption but active engagement, encouraging individuals to participate in discussions or share information that may lead to breakthroughs in investigations. The spotlight from media can attract the attention of investigative journalists who may delve into these stories with fresh perspectives and new leads, often exploring angles that law enforcement might have overlooked or deemed inconsequential at the time of the initial investigation. High-profile cases like the murder of Elizabeth Short, known as the Black Dahlia, demonstrate how renewed media interest can lead to a proliferation of theories, possible suspects, and public discourse that keeps the memory of victims alive while applying pressure for movement on cold cases that have been largely dormant. Another significant aspect of public interest is the emotional engagement it fosters within communities. When a crime occurs, particularly one that remains unsolved, the ramifications are felt not only by the victims' families but also resonate throughout the community. This grief can manifest into collective action, sparking movements in which individuals band together to support victims' families, share information, or advocate for systemic reforms in law enforcement practices. Public interest groups, community organizations, and social media activists can emerge as strong advocates, calling for transparency in investigative processes and pushing for accountability when law enforcement fails in their duties. This collective mobilization can facilitate critical funding for investigations, increased visibility for cold cases, and ultimately, support for families who are still seeking closure. Furthermore, grassroots movements fueled by public interest can have substantial impacts on law enforcement agencies. The social outcry generated by unresolved cases can lead to the establishment of cold case units, dedicated resources allocated for unsolved crimes, and policy changes that prioritize reopening investigations that may have been previously shelved. Initiatives spearheaded by community organizations can pave the way for fundraisers dedicated to supporting victims' families, while online campaigns can gather signatures for petitions aimed at keeping cold cases alive within public dialogue. It is through these collective efforts that community members can exert pressure on local law enforcement agencies to prioritize unsolved cases and revisit old evidence with a fresh set of eyes. The role of public interest becomes even more pronounced with advancements in technology, especially the rise of social media platforms that enable conversations around cold cases to expand exponentially. Users can share information rapidly, tag law enforcement, and engage in discussions that might bring forth new leads or insights. For instance, utilizing hashtags on platforms like Twitter or Instagram can create a viral discourse that brings attention to unsolved cases. Additionally, crowdsourced investigations have emerged, with amateur sleuths and community members analyzing evidence, discussing theories, and collaborating with law enforcement to provide new angles for investigation. While amateur investigations must be approached with caution to avoid excessive speculation or misinformation, they can open doors for innovative solutions that traditional methods may not have considered. Public interest also plays a vital role in preserving the memory of victims and ensuring that their stories are told. This emotional connection fosters a narrative that humanizes those affected by crime, shifting the focus from just the act of violence to the lives that were impacted by it. In a culture where sensationalism can often overshadow the tragic human stories behind cold cases, public interest acts as a reminder of the fundamental need for justice. Engaging narratives that celebrate the lives of victims can drive community support, foster solidarity, and encourage individuals to step forward with any information they may possess, reinforcing a community's commitment to seeking justice. Moreover, the cycling of public interest can evolve with societal trends, reflecting shifting cultural attitudes towards crime, justice, and victimization. As society's understanding of issues related to race, gender, mental health, and class continues to develop, cold cases that intersect with these themes may gain renewed attention that could provoke critical conversations about societal failures. This emerging dialogue can compel law enforcement and policymakers to acknowledge systemic biases and ensure that all victims, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds, receive the focus and resources necessary to seek justice. In summary, public interest emerges as a powerful force in the resolution of cold cases, operating at the intersection of advocacy, community engagement, and communication. It revitalizes investigations, promotes collective action, and fosters societal dialogues around justice and accountability. The interplay between public interest and law enforcement can amplify the voices of victims' families, ensuring that they are not relegated to the shadows of forgotten cases but are integral to a larger narrative that is woven with hope, resilience, and the pursuit of truth. As communities continue to mobilize and participate in the quest for justice for unresolved cases, the impact of public interest serves as a testament to the enduring necessity for transparency, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of resolution within the complex tapestry of the criminal justice system. Recent developments in long unsolved cases have increasingly demonstrated the transformative potential of advancements in forensic science and investigative methodologies in revitalizing cold cases that have haunted communities for decades. For decades, unresolved mysteries have loomed large in the shadows of the justice system, leaving families of victims and communities grappling with unanswered questions and an overwhelming sense of loss. However, as new technologies emerge and law enforcement agencies become more committed to revisiting these cold cases, the pursuit of justice has gained renewed momentum, unveiling previously missed opportunities for resolution and healing. One of the significant catalysts for these changes has been the revolutionary impact of DNA technology. The development of DNA profiling in the late 20th century has been nothing short of a game-changer in criminal investigations. This scientific advancement allows for the accurate identification of individuals from trace amounts of biological evidence such as blood, hair, and saliva. Cases that once seemed irrevocably cold have found new life through DNA analysis, as law enforcement agencies across the globe have been able to harness this technology to conclusively link suspects to long unsolved crimes. For instance, the notorious case of the Golden State Killer, whose reign of terror in California lasted from the mid-1970s to the mid-1980s, serves as a poignant illustration of DNA's power in resolving historical injustices. After decades of evasion, law enforcement utilized genealogical DNA testing to identify Joseph James DeAngelo as the suspect behind a string of brutal assaults and murders. The breakthrough came when investigators compared DNA from crime scenes to genetic data available in commercial ancestry databases. This application of forensic genealogy not only led to DeAngelo's arrest in 2018 but also reignited a conversation about modern investigative techniques and community engagement in solving cold cases, prompting other agencies to adopt similar strategies in pursuit of elusive justice. Additionally, the advancement of forensic anthropology has made significant contributions to resolving cold cases involving unidentified remains, particularly in instances where traditional methods may have failed. Forensic anthropologists utilize their expertise to analyze skeletal remains, determining vital information such as age, sex, ancestry, and even trauma, which can assist in identifying victims that have gone missing for years or even decades. One notable example involves the X-ray imaging techniques used in the restoration of original facial features from skeletal remains, allowing for the creation of facial reconstructions. Such visual representations serve as powerful tools in raising public interest around unsolved cases, inviting community members to come forward with information that could lead to the identification of long-lost individuals. Public engagement initiatives have similarly flourished, driven in part by the rise of social media platforms and community activism groups. In recent years, many law enforcement agencies have turned to social media as a means to reconnect with the public when seeking information about cold cases. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram allow agencies to share stories, photos, and details of unsolved cases, effectively harnessing the power of community involvement. These campaigns can garner widespread support, with individuals sharing posts, contributing leads, and engaging with investigative teams directly. This grassroots engagement not only helps to unpack the narrative surrounding cold cases but also fosters a sense of collective responsibility towards solving these lingering mysteries. Community-led initiatives, such as local volunteer groups dedicated to raising awareness around specific cold cases, have sprung up as well, with activists organizing events, hosting discussions, and collaborating with investigative bodies, all in the name of bringing closure to the families affected by unsolved crimes. Furthermore, renewed interest in cold cases has driven the creation of specialized cold case units within law enforcement agencies. These units are often staffed with seasoned detectives and forensic experts trained to investigate unsolved cases using contemporary methodologies and updated technology. They systematically reassess historical evidence, reevaluate witness statements, and leverage modern forensic advancements to explore fresh possibilities for breakthroughs. Many of these units have reported increased success rates in solving long-standing cases, as their concentrated focus fosters careful and methodical revisits to evidence that might have been overlooked under initial investigations. High-profile cases that were previously left in the dark have found resolution, with victims finally receiving justice and families given the closure they have long sought. The impact of public interest and media on cold cases should not be overlooked. In the age of true crime podcasts and documentary series, many long-forgotten cases have come back into the limelight as creators delve deeply into unsolved mysteries, offering audiences compelling narratives that humanize victims and their stories. This resurgence of attention can lead to individuals with pertinent information stepping forward, ultimately facilitating the investigations. For example, the popular podcast, Criminal, has featured several cold cases, highlighting the power of storytelling in driving conversations around unresolved crime and prompting listeners to share tips that could lead to breakthroughs. Moreover, law enforcement agencies have increasingly recognized the value of engaging with media and community interactions as a strategy to enhance their investigative efforts. Many are forming partnerships with media outlets to craft compelling narratives that build public interest, thereby nurturing a communal responsibility toward justice. The efficacy of such collaborative endeavors has translated into solved cases, whereby years of investigation are catalyzed by the collective efforts of law enforcement and community members united in the quest for answers. In addition to scientific advances, the exploration of systemic failures within the criminal justice system has prompted a broader reflection on accountability and the ethical dimensions of unresolved cases. Social movements advocating for justice reform have shed light on the inequities perpetuated in historical cold cases, especially those involving marginalized communities, and have called for a more equitable approach to investigations. These societal movements, often fueled by public interest, have pushed stakeholders to reevaluate how cases have been approached, emphasizing the importance of diversity and inclusiveness in solving crimes. The desire to understand the complexities of the justice system has spurred continued dialogue about how to rectify the missteps of the past, ensuring that lessons learned from cold cases inform future practices. As society progresses, the convergence of technological advancements, community engagement, and a greater demand for accountability in the criminal justice system presents an optimistic outlook for the future of long unsolved cases. These developments signify not only a deeper understanding of the significance of human stories entwined with these investigations but also a commitment to provide justice and closure to the victims and their families. By embracing new methodologies and fostering collaborative relationships between law enforcement and the community, the landscape of cold cases has shifted toward potential resolution. With an increased focus on transparency, ethical practices, and the collection of comprehensive evidence, society stands at the precipice of a new era where long-standing questions surrounding unresolved crimes may finally find answers, illuminating the past while paving the way for a more just and compassionate future. As interest continues to grow and empathy perseveres, the quest for resolution serves as both a reminder of the enduring pain of unresolved crime and the shared responsibility championed by a society committed to justice. Reopening cold cases today presents a complex array of challenges that intertwine the legal, technological, emotional, and societal dimensions of criminal justice. While the advancements in forensic science and modern investigative techniques have enhanced the capabilities of law enforcement, the very nature of cold cases introduces inherent difficulties that can impede the pursuit of justice. Understanding these challenges requires a nuanced exploration of what it means to revisit unresolved crimes, which often evoke a mix of hope and skepticism among communities and victims' families alike. Firstly, one of the primary challenges lies in the quality and preservation of evidence from the time of the original investigation. Many cold cases span several decades, and over such an extended period, physical evidence can deteriorate or be lost altogether. Items that were once critical to an investigation, such as biological samples, might no longer yield usable DNA due to degradation, contamination, or inadequate preservation methods. Furthermore, detectives might find that essential documentation or investigative notes are missing, leading to gaps in the original case file. Law enforcement agencies often operate with limited resources, and the prioritization of contemporary cases can shift focus away from older investigations, making it tough to allocate appropriate funding and personnel to revisit cold cases. The scarcity of resources can diminish the momentum needed to conduct exhaustive reviews, potentially stymieing efforts to apply new forensic techniques or analytical methods that have emerged since the cases went cold. Additionally, the emotional impact on victims' families must be a central consideration in the reopening of cold cases. While many families seek closure and justice, the process of revisiting traumatic events can be re-triggering, revisiting painful memories they have been trying to process over the years. This complexity adds a layer of sensitivity that investigators must navigate carefully. The emotional stakes can influence the willingness of families to cooperate or engage with law enforcement, especially if previous attempts to seek justice were met with disappointment or perceived inadequacies in the investigation. Balancing the pursuit of new leads with respect for the emotional hurdles that families may experience requires a delicate approach, emphasizing communication and support for those affected by the unresolved crime. Public interest also plays a dual role in the reopening of cold cases, serving as both an asset and a complication. On one hand, increased media attention can reignite community interest and generate support that bolsters investigative efforts. Media coverage, particularly in the age of social media, can prompt new witnesses or informants to come forward with potentially critical information, allowing law enforcement to leverage public engagement as a valuable resource. However, an influx of public interest can also come with challenges. The sensationalism often associated with high-profile cold cases may attract amateur sleuths, leading to an oversaturation of speculative theories that can muddy the public narrative and distract from the facts. Such speculation can undermine the credibility of investigative efforts, creating additional pressure for law enforcement to produce results quickly, which may not be feasible given the complexities involved in revisiting older cases. From a procedural standpoint, the legal implications tied to reopening old cases can present hurdles as well. Statutes of limitations may complicate prosecutions, particularly for cases where there may be limited physical evidence or witness availability. Revisiting the legal framework surrounding a cold case can be a painstakingly slow process, requiring careful navigation through existing laws while considering the potential for newly introduced evidence to challenge long-standing legal precedents. Investigators must also contend with the evolving nature of societal perceptions around crime, justice, and law enforcement practices. Changing attitudes can impact the willingness of communities to cooperate with police, especially in areas with historical tensions between law enforcement and residents. The past handling of cases, particularly those involving marginalized individuals or communities, can instill mistrust that creates barriers to cooperation and information sharing, making the investigative landscape more treacherous. Another challenge in reopening cold cases stems from the implications of new technologies. While the integration of modern forensic science has the potential to offer profound insights, it also requires investigative teams to possess a level of expertise in these advanced methodologies. As the landscape of forensic investigations continues to evolve, investigators must stay current with the latest tools and techniques, necessitating ongoing training and adaptation to new technologies. This requirement can be taxing, particularly for departments already stretched thin by resource constraints. Furthermore, dealing with new technologies also necessitates a comprehensive understanding of how to interpret and apply the findings within the legal system while ensuring that the evidence collected adheres to established protocols, thereby aligning with due process requirements. Legal constraints and privacy considerations surrounding evidence can also act as barriers in reopening cases, particularly when it comes to utilizing familial DNA databases or accessing previously sealed records. While the advancement of techniques like genealogical DNA testing offers new avenues for identifying suspects, such methods provoke ethical discussions about privacy rights and consent. Navigating these legal waters can require substantial legal expertise and collaboration with lawmakers to formulate policies that allow for effective use of emerging technologies while maintaining the integrity of the judicial processes. The pursuit of justice for cold cases is not merely a question of employing modern methods, it also invokes broader societal reckonings. Investigators must navigate the complex dynamics of social justice, particularly in cases whereby systemic injustices and discrimination may have played a role in why cases went unsolved for so long. To adequately address these challenges, law enforcement must work closely with community leaders, advocates, and organizations to ease community fears and build trust. Establishing open channels of communication and demonstrating a commitment to addressing grievances from the past can foster an environment conducive to collaboration, which is essential for gathering information and assisting investigators. Moreover, successful reopening of cold cases is increasingly reliant on creating interdisciplinary collaborations that integrate varied fields of expertise. Collaborating with victim advocacy groups, forensic scientists, psychological experts, and even sociologists can enhance the investigative approach offered to cold cases, generating a well-rounded framework that emphasizes thoroughness and empathy. This integrative perspective not only aids in uncovering previously unnoticed leads but also ensures that the emotional and psychological dimensions associated with unresolved crimes are acknowledged. In conclusion, the challenges of reopening cold cases today are multifaceted and demand a holistic approach that accounts for the array of factors influencing both the investigative process and community engagement. Practical constraints tied to evidence preservation and resource allocation, emotional complexities faced by victims' families, shifting societal dynamics, and the implications of new technologies all converge to create a rich tapestry of challenges that investigators must navigate. As law enforcement agencies commit to tackling these challenges with transparency and collaboration, there is the potential to revitalize cold cases not merely for the sake of resolution but as a means of fostering healing, understanding, and justice in the wider community. The journey from unresolved crime to resolution requires patience, innovation, and a collective commitment to pursue truth amid the complexities of the past, paving the way for a more just and equitable future in the realm of criminal justice. If you found value in exploring the mysteries of cold cases and the evolving pursuit of justice, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more insightful content. Your support helps keep these stories alive and sheds light on the importance of never giving up on uncovering the truth. Thanks for watching.